if somebody's on a mushroom trip and you see some stuff and you're like, wait, I've seen this. List out bullet points on filmmaking.
It is that chemistry. It's so fascinating.
We can throw in a monkey every time you get stopped.
We'll take you up to a point of like absolute euphoria, and then you break into song.
Awesome. Hi, Michael. What's up? How are you?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. I think also secretly I got this chance to watch Better Man because I've seen your work before, and I took this opportunity and saw it. So brilliant. I mean, I wouldn't want to talk in this interview and just have you like list out bullet points and on filmmaking and and the entire universe. It's freaking crazy. I mean, there's so much in filmmaking that you see when you see a film like this. But anyway, before that, I'm an actor. I've done a couple of movies. My little stint with Hollywood.
I've seen you in multiple films, Ali. What are you talking about?
Oh God, no! You.
Of course I am.
No, I wouldn't believe that. But I mean, yeah, maybe.
Victoria and Abdul,
Okay.
I saw, and you're the star in it, so it's pretty hard to miss you.
Thank you. Of course, no introductions needed now after Better Man. But if you would like to add something more, there's Greatest Showman. There's, of course, you've been part of like a lot of other movies as well. Rocketman and Pink. I've seen Pink. It's been a long time. The documentary. But yeah, I would love to know from you.
Yeah, I think I was saying, the Better Man was an independent film, which was a great, huge difference doing that to something like The Greatest Showman. I think filmmaking, full stop, I have such respect for anyone who manages to make film. I think there is such a privilege to creating something that can play the world over. Not only tell a story that can reach so many people, but it's also going to have an impact years after you create it.
It's so amazing you say that, because I was just having a conversation the other day with Gillian Anderson, and we were talking about a book, and we're just jamming, and my one question that time was, how do you navigate art in a world which is right now riddled with war, with famine, with all kinds of stuff happening, right? And suddenly it makes you think as an artist, like is my stuff even gonna matter? And it's true, like now it freaks me out thinking, where is Indian cinema heading, right? 50 years from now, I want to leave stuff behind that people are gonna, it does affect, it can change narratives in an entire society. So and at one
it can bring about difference. It can shine a light on topics that otherwise people don't want to talk about.
If I were to jump to the most cliched question, of course you've probably got this, why the monkey? Like, what's the thing there? Is it because you had it in you because you're a VFX guru? I mean, as I hear, and
yeah,
it's like, okay,
I just wanted to find a unique way into the story, that felt wholly original, but also it felt more honest. I think that you get a better sense of Robbie because of the monkey. Once you add up all of those things, it makes for a more honest portrayal. I saw War of the Planet of the Apes, and I thought it was amazing how emotional the portrayal of those performances were.
Yeah,
I knew that we could get there, but to be honest, it wasn't until we actually started doing it that I first saw those shots come back in that I went, oh yeah, this 100% is going to work.
This is of course related to the performances that you probably saw live, Jonno sort of delivering these wonderful acts.
He brought an entire set, and yourself the sort of frenetic nature of a set when you're trying to get through a lot of pages. But his performance alone brought an entire set to a standstill because every single person was just sitting there watching his performance. And I think Jonno Davies is just a supreme talent, and I'm really excited to watch the career that he's got ahead of him.
You've managed to capture just very, very simple relationships, but in this huge canvas, and I could connect. Like, I know my relationship with my grandfather was exactly how Robbie had with his nan. It was period. There was the exact same relationship. Like, I know nobody supported me in my becoming an actor, because it was the thing you don't do in India, right? Your working class
Yeah.
background, you're gonna freaking become a doctor, engineer, or you know, I studied sciences, so I'm like supposed to be the geek who will turn into like whatever. So there was a battle, but there was this guy who, we created fantasies together. The Nan scene where she blurts out this, that she made the call to his father.
Yeah.
That was, I think, one of the first times you saw Robbie. And I also want to know how Robbie's felt through this entire experience, watching himself. And I think that scene for me was a very, very, very personal scene.
I feel really fortunate because there's not that many people who are in the public eye that would let you tell a story that is this honest and this raw. There are many scenes in this film where Robbie comes across very unappealing.
Yeah.
And I think the power of that is that I think in truth, you and I can't relate to a lot of things about being a pop star. Standing on stage with 100,000 people screaming your name. These are not things that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Well, you might be able to, but I can't.
No, no,
Uh,
no.
but the what we can relate to is saying things that we regret, uh, doing things that we wish we hadn't. Behaving in a way out of jealousy or out of spite or all of these things are incredibly relatable. And the fact that Rob let me go there, particularly when it comes to family, they always say that the people that you love are the ones you hurt the most.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that I will always be so grateful because Rob signed off on the script. But it's one thing looking at words on a page. It's another thing seeing it projected large on a big screen.
Oh, yeah.
And I was sure that there was going to be a scene or a shot where Rob just went, Michael, you've gone too far. That's too personal, or that's too, that doesn't depict me in a good light, or it doesn't, you know, show me in a favorable way.
Mm.
And he didn't cut a single shot from the film. There's not one shot in the entire film. He
Wow.
gave one note on the music, which was basically the mix of the drums in Let Me Entertain. That was it. That was
Yeah.
the only thing we changed after he watched the film. And I just think it's incredibly brave of him, but I also think it's really it's an amazing amount of trust for someone to put in you as a filmmaker
Yeah.
to let you tell their life story in such an open way. Because there are many musical biopics that are just watered down version of the real story. For me, it was always the personal stuff, the Rob's interaction with his family, with his dad, with his nan, um, his mum. Those interactions to me were the ones that I was most interested in portraying because they're the ones that I feel that we can relate to as an audience.
But did you dramatize those? Or are those based on conversations you had with Robbie over, I don't know how long? Like,
Yeah, yeah. So the whole film is based off a series of conversations with Rob that I recorded. And we recorded them over about a year and a half.
oh
So
wow.
many conversations. And and then it was about editing those up.
Yeah.
And quite a few of those recordings are the original voiceovers in the film.
Oh my God. Oh
So the
wow.
voiceover in the film
Even
are
those.
like 70% of them are from those original recording sessions.
And did you piece it together yourself? Like, or was it, I mean, your team was there,
Right.
you had a writing team.
Yes. Yeah, we wrote it, but the myself, Oliver, and Simon,
Yeah.
we all based the script off those recordings.
Wow.
So, there was things that we had to dramatize, to join, to fold in characters,
Yeah.
to do the things you usually have to do to tell a whole life story in an hour and a half, two
Yeah.
hours.
It's amazing how how thin the layers became with the VFX team, I'm sure being freaking amazing. But I mean, you guys got expressions like, and I know we've seen this with Andy Serkis on, you know, Planet of the Apes, and but this was, I mean, like, how did you? It, it's crazy. It's like a ramped up version, right? Like, um,
Yeah, because we were trading off the technology they did for Lord of the Rings with Gollum, the Planet of
uh,
the Apes films, and also James Cameron and Avatar. All three of those projects really combined
wow,
to the R&D that those projects did, we got to benefit from. But then there's just certain things that a monkey does differently to a human. And so the animators would have to make a decision on
yeah,
how human to lean into or how much of the monkey to lean into. And in some cases, much of Robbie to lean into, because there's some very iconic Robbie expressions that Jonno did, but then, you know, the
yeah.
animators would sort of refine it.
Oh
And,
man.
you know, you just get this thing where you really look at this monkey and you see Robbie Williams, you know.
But does that scare you? I mean, a part of it, like we could be removed from this equation, right? As
No, 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 no. People talk
we,
about that. And I just go, when you two things. One is as a director,
yeah,
I want to be on set with actors. Think about your career and the films that you've worked on.
yeah.
Uh, you know, if you didn't have Judi Dench opposite you,
No, it wouldn't work. I mean, it
it
wouldn't
would
work.
be a totally different performance. And that's not to say it would be better or worse. When you put two people opposite each other, the sparks, the magic that happens,
Yeah, yeah.
that's cinema. And as a director, you don't want to ever lose that because it is that chemistry. As a director, you need to play with
Mm,
those actors to find it. And I just don't think there is that level of interaction
mm,
once you move into the digital world. It
yeah,
just doesn't exist.
yeah. It's data. I mean, it's data,
It's
which is
ones and zeros.
lived experiences. Where, yeah. So it's kind of like rhythm over rhythm over rhythm, where you've lost the bass rhythm, really. And I think every human being brings that bass rhythm with them, which is like the, you know, your own tempo, and then you enter the tempo of the context you're creating, which is the scene or whatever. So it'll always be unique.
Well,
Yeah.
it's unique and it'll be different every time. That's what the great thing is, you know.
Having said that, now, Michael, like when you are working with such a VFX heavy film, do you imagine like on I would love to see this on paper, right? Like your screenplay, did it read the way you see everything, or did you storyboard it later, like after that, or were
Yeah,
there
so
ideas which, you know, like you might have an idea but you don't have the technological knowledge of that idea, like, oh, can this be created? Like if I go on a trip, you know, if somebody's on a mushroom trip and you see some stuff and you're like, wait, I've seen this, but can somebody create?
yeah, I think the way I work is very iterative. So
Mm,
there's the scripted word, then there is a rehearsal process with actors. And some of that rehearsal is very lo-fi. It's just shooting it on iPhones, very, very crude. But it's sort of making a digital uh, video version of the film. Before you have all the camera trucks and the gear and the lighting and all of that, just with the actors,
oh,
just
nice.
blocking out the whole film and then cutting that together and storyboarding it and animating over the top of it
Mm,
and just keep iterating it and iterating it and until you feel something, until you get the goosebumps. And if you get the goosebumps in that very crude version, you then know that once you get in all of the hair and makeup and wardrobe and lighting and everything
yeah,
else, it's going to. But you go into the shoot with this great confidence that what you're actually going to spend all this time and money doing already
is working.
in its crudest form, it works.
I would love to know how you did the Regent Street. I mean, that is that my way, of course, you know, Commanda, all of these, of course, but the Regent Street kind of like is this big choreography, right? Like, and I know I've heard the the delays and the, because you had to get permissions from the crown and of course the queen's. I mean,
Uh, that number came so close to never happening. But
oh,
the preparation of it was kind of a year and a half in the making. We used to go down to Regent Street late at night and just dance down the street at like 2 and 3 in the morning, just with a
oh,
handful of dancers, just trying to block it out.
oh, nice, nice.
And then we'd come back and we'd cut it all together and we'd work out, oh, we can run through this doorway here and we can run across the street here. And
Yeah, because
it just,
there are like shops there, and like, did you
yeah.
enter? Yeah, right. Because I've
We,
stayed in
we, we,
Lancaster.
only, we ran into doorways, but those doorways are white points because
Oh, yeah.
the interior of the shops we actually shot in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh my God. Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and the interior of the shops were done in Australia and the exterior is done on Regent Street.
Wow. And My Way, which was, of course, the end of the film and everything. How did you shoot that? That's always been, of course, it's the emotional point of the film. So,
yeah, I mean, that was kind of a recreation of a concert that Rob did at Royal Albert Hall, but we shot the stage it was actually the first week of filming. We shot that musical number.
wow.
In fact, it was the first day of filming. We did that. We did the last scene on the stage.
Oh man, interesting.
And they've got to jump to basically the last page of the script. But because we'd done the rehearsals ahead of time, emotionally they were able to really stick the landing. After we shot it all together, and once we'd cut it all together, we could see all the different angles that we needed to shoot at Royal Albert Hall in London. And then Robbie had 2 nights at Royal Albert Hall where everyone in the audience had to come dressed in black tie so that they could replicate the audience.
Yeah.
And then we literally set up was all around the audience to match the camera moves that we did in the actual performance back in Australia. And that's how we got all the environment plates, all of those big wide shots, all of the looking over people's shoulders back out into the audience. All of that we shot over 2 nights with Rob doing a real concert at Royal Albert Hall.
I have a question as an actor. Someone like you, right? What are you looking in an actor? I mean, like, because you've been associated with musicals per se, right? Music is in you. You're always using it. Firstly, would you ever do something non-musical? Or I don't think anything is non-musical really, but yeah.
As I say, it's funny. People ask me if I would do something that's not musical, and I say, yeah, but it would be a music-driven piece. Meaning, when I look at films like The Mission, that is a music-driven piece. It would not be the same film without that music. Every Quentin Tarantino film is a music-driven film.
Yeah.
The soundtracks are implicit to the storytelling. And so I will very much make one of the next films music-driven. And I'll be working out the score along with the script, if that makes sense. The rule that I say is, I always say you sing when words no longer suffice. Great musicals, in my opinion, will take you up to a point of like absolute euphoria, and then you break into song. You've fallen in love, you break into song. You've achieved something you could never dream of, you break into song. Or the opposite. You're in the depths of despair. You've lost something. It means the world to you, or someone has broken your heart, and you sing. When people say, I don't like musicals, I'm like, well, I don't like bad musicals either, but great musicals are just fantastic stories. And they're not just moments of great musical cinema. Gene Kelly's swinging around a lamppost in Singing in the Rain is one of the greatest moments in cinema history. What is it that sparks your imagination when you're being given a script?
I look for that. I look for that rhythm. Like, I remember a scene in Victoria and Abdul where Judy and I are just dancing to the music that's running inside, and we just have a scene. And I never imagined that scene like that. I always thought it's two people talking because on the script it wasn't there. But Stephen comes in and he says, "Oh, you know what? I just fuck this shit. Yeah, I want you guys to dance." So, you know, it's grumpy old Stephen Frears, right? So I can never do him. But he does this, and and that was the first time I felt like, okay, this is different because I'm keeping a rhythm of a dance on a very basic level, but
Yeah.
I'm delivering a totally different rhythm, which is an emotional rhythm of two characters and their love for each other, which is coming from a totally different history of its own. And that was being
Yep.
combined in that little moment. And I thought, wow, we were actually then, hitting the right points of the music with a performance and then coming back. And then the music is there and we are there, but we kind of just merge and go back, and it felt fluid after a while. And the effect that had on me was amazing because ever since I've looked at cinema, acting, all in terms of music. It's music.
I always remember Mark Rylance talking about Shakespeare, and he was saying how
Yeah.
Shakespeare is just the jazz standards of
Yeah.
theater.
Yeah.
And in the same way that Ella Fitzgerald does a jazz standard in a different way to Louis Armstrong, who does it in a different way to Frank Sinatra, every one of those people sings the jazz standard in their
Yeah.
own way. It's just the confidence to play with those jazz
Yeah.
standards, you know, to make them your own. You hear the words differently depending
Mm.
on the performance. You know,
Ah.
Jimmy Scott is an amazing singer,
Yeah.
uh, and and I think it was Stevie Wonder who said, you know, Jimmy Scott would sing these jazz standards that you've heard before, but for the first time you understand them.
Wow.
And I just love that as an idea that it's music you've heard before, it's words you've heard before.
Yeah.
Embrace me, my sweet embraceable you, and you're hearing these words, but then all of a sudden someone delivers it and you hear it and it makes sense in a way that it never has before.
Yeah. There are very few stories in the world. There are nine emotions, and everything else is the permutation combination of those nine emotions. Of course, like we use breath to create. I mean, of course, I've studied something here in India which is very unique, and there are these bunch of musicians. There's a place called Adi Shakti where I keep telling everybody about it because it's just they're not doing this kind of work anywhere in the world, and they're playing with rhythm and percussion instruments and using the same breath to kind of channelize emotions on your body. And then they perform plays for a long, long time, and so I kind of happened to learn a little from them. But when I shifted to cinema, you suddenly realize how relevant, or like how relevant is an actor in that moment, because you also need that shot. You might want him to just turn his head a certain way. There is a mark that you got to hit, and somewhere in the middle there's imagination, and somewhere in the middle there's just you know like we're very vulnerable, fucked up people. Like we think we could keep thinking like, okay, what does my director want now? What does it Should I bring in something of my own, or should I
I
just
mean,
follow?
I think what's really interesting for me is just seeing how every actor needs something different from you. Some actors will do a take and then look at you because they want some feedback. They want to know, did they hit the mark? Are they off? And they want that immediacy. And other actors, early on, I would jump on after the first take, and the actor would be like, "Well, no, just give me a few takes. I'm still
Yeah.
trying to find it myself." And you have
Yeah.
to go, of course, like you've got to give them that space
Yeah.
because they're also trying to get something. And then once they've got what they think or they feel is right,
Yeah.
they will then look to you to be like, is there anything else to explore? But it's different for every actor, right? It's such a unique thing. And I think that's why I love the rehearsal process, because I think it's much more playful when you don't
Yeah.
have the apparatus, which is the 200 people on set, standing around you.
Yeah.
And when it is just a hall and a handful of people,
Yeah.
um, you're much more willing to have the freedom of exploration, you know.
Yeah.
It takes so much time to get an animated performance.
Yeah.
And I think that Guillermo del Toro did it beautifully in Pinocchio.
Oh yeah.
He imbued these animated characters, but he put in these characteristics that you would see in, so like Pinocchio sort of trips a little bit, and
Yeah.
he gets balance, and
Yeah.
he sort of, it's the sort of thing you would see if it was open, you know.
I love this process. I think it's amazing. But
I
it's
mean,
long.
it is long.
And
I mean,
like, how many years did you? How
this
this
was
must.
this was 6 years. Yeah, but I mean, Sherman took 8.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get better at, like,
So what's your routine? You get up in the morning. What do you do? I mean, this is a lot of patience, right, Michael? Like you're.
patience. It's a lot of index cards, like up the board there,
Oh, nice.
you can see,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's it's just always plotting out the story, And what's interesting to me, at a certain point when you've got an idea,
Yeah.
so as you said, you've got a team of writers. You've got to pitch that idea to writers. Then you've
Yeah.
got to pitch it to producers. Then you've got to pitch it to money people or to a studio. In the
Exactly.
telling of the story, every time you tell the story, every audience you have, whether they want to come on board and help you, whether they want to come on board and realize what you're talking about,
Yeah.
every one of them is helping you get better at telling the story. The beautiful thing about that, and it is something I explored in Better Man and I want to explore more, is
Uh-huh.
when you're in a heightened reality, the ability to step between someone's external life and their internal life, what's going on inside them, the audience is much more willing to let you step between those two worlds. The
Mm.
world of, it's a very close distance to go from a heightened reality to pure fantasy.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
go from witty realism to fantasy is quite jarring.
Yeah.
But to go from a heightened reality to
Too fan.
fantasy is quite a smooth transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
We'll buy that.
because of that, you do really get to step in and out of one's imagination. And I love that. I love that in a way that I'm only just starting to explore myself.
Wow. Yeah. I think it's the beauty there. Does this also affect the cameras you use?
I tend to use cameras with smaller camera bodies because we rehearse everything just using iPhones and we whip the iPhones
Oh yeah,
around.
yeah. We need to be fast. Yeah.
And when we're trying to replicate them, like literally the camera's going between two people, and you're like, a big
Wow.
camera is not going to fit between two people as they're dancing. And so you keep looking for camera rigs that are smaller and smaller.
Okay.
But the truth is, yeah, it's never about camera as such. It always comes back to, what can we realize?
Yeah.
Um, and then how we realize it becomes a technical issue.
I mean, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like, how Nolan uses IMAX cameras. I remember on
Yeah.
Death on the Nile, we had these same bazooka cameras, which
Yeah.
were film cameras, and they would just be really heavy. And suddenly in the middle of the scene, I'm going like,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm like, what happened? Like, no, no, it's fine, it's fine. And then suddenly one guy's panting, and he's like, so I stopped the scene. I said, Kenneth, is everybody okay? He said, no, he's just tired. Like, it's fine because it's a single shot. He's holding this camera. So I was like, okay, that's anyway. Um, this has been really, really enriching. I wish we could just sit in another room and talk, but
I would
maybe
love
maybe
that.
at a good time. Thank
If
you.
you're, if you're ever doing promo for any of your work in LA or London, let me
I
know.
do. Yeah, I keep coming to London a lot. So Yeah, hell
I'm
yeah.
there a lot as well, so it'd be great to catch up.
Oh, oh, perfect, perfect. I will. I'll make sure I'll shoot you an email.
Please
This
do.
has been really nice.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and thanks for again for making it possible. I'm really happy.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you, guys. Okay. Bye bye.